Here's a tutorial on locomotive rhythms. So originally this is just for the left hand, but we're going to talk about eventually putting it together with the both hands. But first, let's just talk about the left hand patterns. So we're going to be in C position, but keeping in mind this can also be done in various other positions like G, D, A, etc., right? But we'll focus on the simplest one, which is just white keys on C major pentascale. So these are the 5 notes that we're going to be using as we go down these rhythms. So we're going to initially start with quarter notes. And then as you can see, the rhythms keep getting a little more complex as you go down the lines. So adding more eighth notes or a mixture of quarter and eighths. So the goal of going through this exercise is to, once you start that first note, you're going to be playing all the way through to the end without a break or pause. But let's go through one line at a time. So first line is just steps up and down, keeping it legato. And depending on how comfortable you are with eighth notes, the 1 and 2 and from measure 3, I would suggest starting the pattern at the very first measure a little bit slower. So that's why they're recommending the counts, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and etc. So then that way you don't feel like you're going to panic when you get to the next lines with the eighth notes. So I'm just going to pick this pace, 1 and 2 and. So here's our first line, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, now going into measure 3, if we keep that same tempo that we chose at the beginning, the next one is going to feel faster because we have to fit 2 eighth notes into 1 beat now. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So keeping in mind with our 5-finger pattern, keep our finger joints very strong so that we're not playing with collapsed fingers or flat pancake fingers. So always want to keep a roundedness in our hand. All right, on to measure 5. So this is where we switch up the rhythm and we have a little bit of quarter, a little bit of eighths. So I would still recommend keeping that 1 and 2 and pattern of counting in your mind, or even better, counting out loud. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, noticing that measure 5 and 6, the pattern is not quite all stepwise motion. There's a little bit of skips in there. So remember, space, 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 space to the next space. Those are skips, right? Now on to measure 7. Back to the steps, and then we have a little bit of skips at the end. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and here's the skips. And there you have it for just left hand. So to pose a challenge for yourself, you could set the metronome. So I'll just give you an example of what you could potentially set it at. So here's 70 for each quarter note. So if I keep this on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So that is quite a lot, it's definitely a lot faster than what we were doing at the beginning of the video. So if that is way too fast for you, you could try 50. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So you could practice like that. So start at 50 and then work your way up in increments of 10. So if 50 feels really comfortable, go to 60. 60 feels really comfortable, go to 70. And you could just keep going as fast as you want, but keeping in mind that it's extra clear and it's really together in sync with the metronome. Okay, now we're going to talk about the both hands putting it together. So this is another challenge that we can add on. So basically, with the both hands, you're going to copy this left hand, exactly what you did, into the right. So we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that's how the both hands would go. So if you'd like to follow along at the same time, feel free to rewind and we can try this together in sync with each other. So now, as an extra side thing, I'm going to play the duet part that's at the bottom of this page, assuming that we're doing 1 and 2 and 3 and that particular pace. So I'm going to give a count off of 1 full measure, and then we're going to come in together with that duet. So you could try this with just the left hand by itself, or if you want that challenge, you could try both with the duet, both hands with the duet. So totally your call. But here we go with the duet. So I'll give you the count off. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Awesome. All right. So if you'd like to extend this exercise, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you could try it in G, D major, any 5-finger pentascale pattern that you've already learned.